You have felt it before. A pressure behind your eyes, a tightening across your temples, a dull, throbbing weight that sits inside your skull and refuses to leave. You call it a headache. You reach for a pill, and within 20 minutes, it's gone. Now imagine that pill doesn't exist, the pharmacy doesn't exist, the concept of medicine doesn't exist, and the pressure behind your eyes is getting worse. For more than 99% of human history, a headache was not an inconvenience. It was a crisis. Not because the pain was worse than what you feel today. The pain was exactly the same. Your skull is the same skull. The biology hasn't changed, but everything else had. The interpretation, the fear, the complete and total absence of an explanation. Let's go back. Far back, 100,000 years ago. A group of early humans on the African savanna. A small tribe, maybe 20 people, moving, hunting, surviving. One of them wakes up one morning, and something is wrong inside their head. Not a wound, not a visible injury, no blood, no broken bone, nothing that can be seen, touched, or treated with the tools they have. Just pain. Coming from inside. Think about what that means. Every other pain this person has ever felt had a source they could identify. A cut from a sharp rock, a burn from the fire, a bruise from a fall. Pain in their world always came from outside. Something hit you, something cut you, something burned you. But this was pain with no origin, pain that came from nowhere, pain that was happening inside the skull, the most protected part of the entire body, the part that houses everything that makes you, you. The ancient human brain, and this is important, is the same brain you are using right now. It is wired to find explanations. When something happens with no visible cause, the brain does not accept "I don't know" as an answer. It builds one. And in a world without science, without medicine, without any understanding of neurology or blood vessels or inflammation, the explanation it built was the only one that made sense. Something is inside my head, something that isn't supposed to be there. In virtually every pre-scientific culture ever studied, a headache was not seen as a physical malfunction. It was seen as an intrusion. Something external had entered the body, a spirit, a demon, an enemy's curse, the anger of an ancestor. The Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations, had a specific demon for it. They called it ad disease. In ancient Egypt, headaches were attributed to the god Sekhmet, sending invisible arrows into the heads of her enemies. Across indigenous cultures in South America, headaches were believed to be caused by the soul partially leaving the body. In ancient China, headaches were seen as an imbalance between the forces of yin and yang. Different cultures, different languages, different gods. Same conclusion. Something is inside you that should not be there. This was not ignorance. This was pattern recognition. The human brain is the most sophisticated pattern recognition machine that has ever existed on this planet. And when it encounters pain with no visible cause, it does exactly what it was designed to do. It finds the most logical explanation available. In a world where diseases were caused by bad water, predators were hidden in tall grass, the idea that something invisible had entered your head was not paranoid. It was the only framework that fit. So, what did they do about it? This is where it gets fascinating, because the treatments that ancient humans developed for headaches, across cultures that had zero contact with each other, were remarkably similar. And some of them actually worked. The oldest known medical text in human history is the Edwin Smith Papyrus. One of the most common treatments for headaches across ancient cultures was pressure, pressing firmly on the temples with fingers or stones, squeezing the skull from both sides simultaneously. This was not accidental. This was empirical medicine. They didn't know why it worked. But they had noticed, over generations of trial and error, that pressure on the outside of the skull sometimes reduced the pressure felt on the inside. Modern medicine didn't discover this principle until the 19th century. Ancient humans were doing it 10,000 years ago. The second treatment was heat. Almost every ancient culture applied heat to the head during a headache. Warm stones pressed against the temples, steam from heated water poured over herbs, the head held close to a fire. Again, they didn't know the mechanism. But heat dilates blood vessels, increases circulation, and can reduce the muscle tension that causes tension headaches. They had discovered this through observation alone. The third treatment is the one that will stop you: trepanation. It is the oldest surgical procedure in human history, and it was performed specifically for headaches. Trepanation is the act of drilling, scraping, or cutting a hole into a living person's skull. Not a small hole, a hole sometimes as large as your fist. Archaeologists have found trepanned skulls on every inhabited continent on Earth. In Peru alone, more than 800 trepanned skulls have been found, some dating back over 7,000 years. And here is the part that makes this genuinely extraordinary. Many of these skulls show evidence of healing, which means the patients survived. Not just the surgery, they survived long enough afterward for the bone to begin growing back. In some skulls, the procedure was performed multiple times. The same person trepanned more than once, because it worked, or at least they believed it worked. Think about that for a moment. A person in pain so severe, a headache so persistent and so overwhelming that they allowed another person to cut a hole in their skull, with no anesthesia, with no antibiotics, with no understanding of infection or sterilization, just the belief that whatever was inside the skull pressing against the brain needed a way out. And so they made one. The Inca performed trepanation with obsidian blades. The Neolithic Europeans used sharpened flint. In each case, the surgeon, these were skilled practitioners with years of experience, would carefully scrape or cut through the skull without penetrating the brain beneath. Skulls have been found where the angle of the scraping shows clear evidence of technique, of method, of someone who had done this before, many times. And what did the patient do while this was happening? We don't know for certain, but we know that some form of pain management existed in almost every ancient culture. Willow bark, which contains salicin, the compound that aspirin is derived from, was used in ancient Egypt, ancient China, and among indigenous cultures in North America, all independently, all before any contact between those civilizations. Cannabis was used as a painkiller in ancient China as far back as 2700 BCE. Opium poppies were cultivated in ancient Mesopotamia. The ancient humans who performed trepanation almost certainly gave their patients something. They weren't cruel. They were working with every tool available to them. But there was something else happening beyond the physical treatment, something that modern medicine is only now beginning to understand: the ritual. In virtually every ancient culture where trepanation was practiced, the procedure was accompanied by ceremony, chanting, fire, specific words spoken in a specific order. The shaman or healer who performed the surgery was not just a surgeon. They were also a spiritual intermediary, someone who could speak to whatever had entered the skull, negotiate with it, or command it to leave. And modern neuroscience has discovered something remarkable about this. The ritual component was not useless. In 1978, researcher John Levine at the University of California published a study showing that expectation alone could produce measurable pain relief, not imagined relief, actual, measurable biological pain reduction. This is the mechanism behind the placebo effect, and it is most powerful when it is delivered with authority, ritual, and belief. An ancient healer who performed trepanation with full ceremonial gravity, who told the patient with complete conviction that the spirit was being released, was activating a real biological process. The patient's brain was releasing endorphins, real endorphins, in response to the ritual. The ceremony was medicine, now. Here is where this becomes personal. You have felt a headache. Recently, probably. You reached for ibuprofen or paracetamol without thinking about it, a pill that was developed in 1969. That has been in mass production for less than 60 years. For the 300,000 years before that pill existed, your ancestors dealt with the same pain, with the same skull, the same nerves, the same throbbing temples, and they built an entire world of medicine, ritual, and surgery around it. They scraped holes in each other's heads with flint tools and somehow kept each other alive. They discovered that willow bark reduced pain without knowing what salicin was. They sat in circles and chanted over the sick without knowing what endorphins were. And the people who survived those headaches, the people who were treated by those healers, who underwent those rituals, who sometimes had holes cut in their skulls and lived, they are your direct ancestors. The next time you feel that pressure behind your eyes, that tightening across your temples, that dull, throbbing weight inside your skull, reach for your pill. It will work faster than willow bark. It will work better than a hole in your head. But for 1 second before you swallow it, consider what it replaced. 300,000 years of humans in pain, trying everything they could think of to make it stop.